To put in perspective, and I mentioned this even yesterday, that at this time in 2019, there were 10 Democrats running for president of the United States. 10 Democrats running at this time in 2019. When you go back to January of 2015, you had 7 Republicans already running for president of the United States the year before. We are now about a year from the Iowa caucus. Donald Trump is the only declared Republican for president of the United States. But the word on the street is that on February 15th, Nikki Haley, ambassador to the United Nations, governor and state legislator for South Carolina, will be announcing she is running for president of the United States. Now, the reaction from a lot of people today was, or she can't pull this off, or why bother? This is going to be DeSantis Trump. Trump's going to ignore her. She's not a threat. I would not be so dismissive of Nikki Haley if I were you. I happen to know something about Nikki Haley. She actually is a friend in the actual friend sense, not a friend in the political sense. She and Michael, her husband, wonderful people. Her parents, I've spent time with her parents. She is someone who can navigate the cultural political landscape of America and has a very good conservative instinct and one hell of a story. Her parents coming from India, where they were essentially royalty, so to speak, and giving it all up, coming to the United States. I remember her mom telling me the story one time of Nikki's grandmother coming to the United States for the first time to see the family. And Nikki's mom was vacuuming, and it so upset Nikki's grandparents to see Nikki's parents working that they got up, went to the airport, and flew back to India. And her parents were first-generation American immigrants to this country. She is an American success story. And I don't know that a lot of people know that about Nikki. I don't know that they know her background and her story so much. And she's now got a chance to resell herself in a way that maybe she hasn't been able to sell outside of South Carolina before. She did not have to, being a presidential appointee to the United Nations. I would not be dismissive of this for a lot of reasons. And I do need to say, going into this, you know my bias. She is a friend of mine. I do like her. I was supportive of her when she ran for governor. But let me set the stage for why I think this is a unique candidacy for the presidency. And it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, how it plays out. It's been very clear she was laying some groundwork for this. And now we know she's preparing a video. It'll launch February 12th, February 15th. Somewhere in there, press reports out. Yep, February 15th. This is from the Post-Courier in South Carolina. Cementing what had been in the works for months, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley will formally announce she's running for president, will seek the Republican nomination for the 2024 ticket. According to an invitation soon going out to her backers, Haley's advertised special announcement will come February 15th at The Shed at the Charleston Visitor Center, a downtown gathering spot that could draw hundreds of supporters into the heart of the city's tourism district. The confirmation she's entering the race came January 31st from a member of Haley's inner circle. She teased at running for the White House for months, increasing her footprint on social media and in national interviews that she was leaning towards an official bid. I want to go back to the beginning. Nikki Haley was a CPA in South Carolina, but we could probably actually use one in the White House. She was a CPA. She ran for the state legislature in South Carolina. She became, if you will, she moved into the wing of Mark Sanford, who was the quirky South Carolina governor. Now, this is before the Appalachian Trail and all that. Just set the stage here. So Mark Sanford wins in South Carolina, and he goes against the good old boy network grain of South Carolina politics. Though South Carolina had shifted Republican, there was a lot of those Republicans had been Democrats, very much like in my state of Georgia. A lot of the Republicans had been Democrats. They became Republicans, and it was an all shucks good old boys network. And across the board, one of the things they opposed was transparency. They liked to go to Columbia and have no one know exactly what they did. They were in the pocket of the local chamber of commerce. They were willing to spread the wealth around, to win friends, influence people, attract business. There really wasn't an ideology other than propping up a status quo. In comes Mark Sanford, who's this reformer as governor of South Carolina, and he wants change. He wants transparency. This in South Carolina, the legislature did not have to record their votes. You could not tell how legislators voted on big votes. There wasn't a way to figure stuff like that out. And he wanted things like that. He wanted more budget transparency. He wanted to be able to attract business to South Carolina without opening the treasury of South Carolina to bring them in. He wanted to provide incentives for good business and good stewardship without all the waste and inefficiencies of a typical Southern government. And he fought the legislature and won several times, and along the way attracted into politics people like Nikki Haley, who was a fiscal conservative. She was socially conservative in the sense of South Carolina conservatism, but she's really focused on we gotta fix our government. We need transparency. We need sound fiscal reform. We need to make South Carolina good for business. We need to not disadvantage our small businesses to attract Fortune 500 companies. We need to be a place where they can all do business together without picking winners and losers. Just make South Carolina a place that is business friendly overall, deregulate, promote the free market, and business will come to South Carolina. They had a port. They've got great airports. They're on the coast. They're in the southeast. It's a perfect, logical place if they play it right. And so Mark Sanford did these things, and his government fell apart when he went hiking on an Appalachian Trail, which was euphemism for having an affair with a woman from Argentina and lying about it. He left. Lieutenant governor takes over, not exactly the most popular person on the planet, was very much with the good old boys, and Nikki Haley decided to run for governor. This is 2010. So Haley decides to run for governor, and she's running against the Good Old Boy Network. They slandered her. They accused her of being a whore. I mean, literally, they accused this woman of being a whore, sleeping around with people, they claim. Just made stuff up about her and her husband. Nasty, nasty character assassination of Nikki and her husband, who's in the military. And the grassroots gravitate to Nikki Haley. They're tired of the Good Old Boy system. When I was at redstate.com, we backed Nikki. She came to our gathering in 2009. We began fundraising for her nationwide, promoting her as a conservative reformer who was really committed to small government. Didn't just preach it, she practiced it. She got into the runoff. One of my honors in life was she invited me to come to the steps of the state capitol in South Carolina and introduce her and Sarah Palin, who, having lost in 2008 with John McCain, was a force within the Republican Party and endorsed Nikki Haley and pushed her over the top, and she won. She became a very good governor in South Carolina. One of the things she committed to doing was forcing through transparency reforms, and they fought her. They fought her, and she won. And then that horrible day came. She had won re-election. And that awful day came when Dylan Roof went into that AME church in Charleston, South Carolina, and prayed with those people before murdering them. And this woman, whose parents were immigrants to the United States, and she a first-generation immigrant into this country, and first-generation American, neither black nor white, in the crossroads of life in the South, in the heart of the Confederacy, had to lead her state, which still flew the Confederate flag over the state capitol, and convince them that now was the time to take that flag down, to heal the state. And she built a bipartisan coalition, and some people still to this day hate her for doing this, built a bipartisan coalition and got the Confederate flag taken down from the grounds of the South Carolina state capitol, where it had flown since the Civil War, first atop the Capitol and then on a pole dedicated to it on the Capitol grounds. And when Donald Trump ran for president in 2016, she was willing to politely criticize him when she disagreed with him. He would attack her, and she would do her bless his heart routine and was willing to not really turn the other cheek per se, but willing to push back on him politely, diplomatically, but she wasn't going to take his attacks when she didn't support him, and earned his respect and became the ambassador to the United Nations, where she went much in the vein of John Bolton when George W. Bush put him there, was willing to fight the United Nations establishment. She was willing to fight against the anti-Semites. She was willing to stand for Israel. She was willing to point out the absurdity of the Human Rights Commission of the United Nations being stocked with Iran, Venezuela, China, and other totalitarian regimes. She was willing to push back on them. She was willing to fight for reforms, to fight for other nations to pay their fair share. And when she left, she was also willing to criticize Donald Trump. She was one of the very few members of the Trump administration who was clearly supportive of the president's agenda, but was also willing to say he got things wrong. That's actually kind of an anomaly that set her apart. She's always been this way. She's willing to say what she believes is right and wrong. She's not willing to keep her mouth shut when she feels compelled to say something. And she was willing to criticize Donald Trump while still supportive of his administration. Now, the left despises that she would do this, that, with the left and a lot of the right, you've got to be all in or all out. You can't just be your own person and be your own thinking person and criticize when you think someone's wrong and be polite in it. And she did, and it earned her enemies on both sides. A lot of people are dismissive of what's the point? Why do this? I mean, this should be DeSantis, Trump. Why get in? Why not? She has something to offer. She has a record of racial reconciliation in the Deep South as a daughter of immigrants to this country who was a conservative. She has a record of leadership on the world stage as UN ambassador. She has a lot to offer to the campaign. I don't just say this as a friend. I say this as someone who has admired her ability to go beyond where she was in South Carolina as a CPA, to a state legislator, to a governor, to the United Nations ambassador, to someone who's going to run for president of the United States. Her story is our story. It is a remarkable story, a first-generation American now running for president of the United States as a fiscal conservative. If she was on the left, there would be hagiography from the media. This first-generation American running for president of the United States, there would be mass hagiography from the left. They would be celebrating this. Look at them with Kamala Harris and how they built her up. Nikki Haley would get that treatment, except she's not one of them. She's one of us. She's a conservative. She believes in small government. She believes in efficiencies of government. She believes in not letting the government do what the private sector can do better. And now she heads into the arena. A lot of people say it's a waste of time. She shouldn't do it. They told Bill Clinton the same thing in 1992. It was a waste of time to run against George H.W. Bush. It was a waste of time because Mario Cuomo was going to get in. It was all a waste of time. And now we call him president. Nikki Haley, welcome to the arena.